The July 28th meeting of the Audit Finance Subcommittee. We welcome you here.
I think she started recording it.
Oh, they're not, are you recording it now? Okay. Do we want to wait for Dr. Aguirre? Sure. Yeah, okay. To the July 28th meeting of our Audit Finance Subcommittee. We've got a full agenda, so we'd like to get going. First of all, are there any communications from the public? Anybody want to make a comment for the record? Ooh.
I think we have to do roll call first.
Oh, okay. All right, with that said, we'll start over here with Ms. Schmidt from Assemblyman Alvarez's office.
Yes.
And of course, our superintendent, Moises Aguirre, and Arturo Solis, and a member of our board. So with that, are there any members of the public who would like to make any comments?
There is no comments at this time.
Okay, terrific. Any members of the committee here would like to make any comments as we open up?
Yes, thank you, Chair Emerald. The only comment is that I was contacted by Member Gutowski. He said he's running 5 to 10 minutes late.
We'll go ahead and start and then welcome Mr. Gutowski when he arrives. Thank you. There is heavy traffic out there. Everybody's heading for the beach or something. And any comments from the public? Anybody like to say any words? Okay. I don't see any hands going up, so I guess that everybody is squared in, and we're going to go ahead and start our items for discussion. And item number 1 has to do with audits. And we'll be hearing from our auditors on a number of issues this afternoon involving, we'll invite Crow up to LLP, not you're a Crow, but Crow, our auditors. And I know you've got quite a list here of items, and I'll just preview it for the public. Our district financial audit, Proposition O financial and performance audits, Measure DD, Measure RR, our recently approved measures, and other ongoing and completed external audits and reviews. With that, if you'd like to introduce yourself, I'll give you the floor.
I've met a couple of you in the past. Just for the record, my name is Charles Ribley. I'm a senior manager with Crow LLP, and as you noted, we're engaged to conduct your external financial and compliance audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2025. So the purpose of this discussion is to provide an update to the committee on sort of status of the audit, our aim and our objective for the remainder of the audit process, and address any questions you may have in the interim. So as you rightly acknowledged, there are several components to our relationship with the district for our audits. So the first one being the district overall financial audit. So we're going to be helping management with the production of the audit report, which is the financial statements of the district, as well as reporting on compliance with state regulations and federal laws and regulations as well. So at this point, earlier in the year, we conducted what we call site visits on a sample of school sites for attendance and associated student body procedures and controls, and then also compliance. So the site visits were really to test on the compliance side attendance of a sample of students to see that those records for attendance were contemporaneously maintained in comparison to what was reported to the state for attendance records. And then for student body, again, we're looking at the internal control structure, making sure that on that sample of sites that we've got an understanding the process that was going on for different types of transactions, right? So making sure that revenue is recorded properly, expenditures have the proper approval process, and then if there were things such as a student store, that there's appropriate controls over those assets in the student store. And so that was the first phase. The next phase, which is coming up next week, although I know we've been doing a lot of work leading up to this, management has, we're going to be conducting our interim portion. A bulk of our audit work is related to, this next week, related to compliance for federal requirements and state. So there's a lot of work there. And then also gearing up for the bond audits, which are noted there as your Prop O, Measure DD, and Measure R. So the work related to that, good evening. Work related to the bond audits entails sample of site visits, looking to see that we've gotten evidentiary, we've been able to evidence that there was things taking place in respect of those expenditures that were being incurred. So that's part of the agreed upon procedures that we have with you all as part of our performance audit. And then also, again, looking to understand the internal control processes that are in place over the Prop O and the different measures that are active. And then in the fall, leading into the kind of as you close the books, the district management team have prepared the unaudited actuals. That's when we will come in October to audit the year-end numbers. So that's when we pull everything together with management and produce the, like I said before, the audit report for the district as a whole, and we'll produce financial statements and a performance audit report for each of the Proposition O, Measure DD, and Measure RR. And so in that process, our aim, the state has a deadline that they've set for all local education agencies to provide the audit report to the State Controller's Office, the CDE, your County Office of Ed, by December 15th. We're working with management to get everything we need to be able to do our work to then produce that final document by that date. And if we hit snags in that process, we, as I always say with every district, we communicate with you all if we're having additional need for time for some reason or another as we lead up to that deadline. So we kind of work with you all to make sure we're all apprised of the current status. But our aim is to issue the audit report by December 15th. And leading up to that, we would present the draft reporting to the audit committee and then to the board as well as part of that process for reporting. And so myself, along with the rest of our audit team, led by Elizabeth Sov, who's the audit partner, will be working with management to ensure that we get that timeline to the best of all of our abilities to make sure that we meet that timeline that the state has set for us. I welcome any questions that you may have about the audit process or the status as it is right now, if you want me to expand on any particular area.
Well, if nobody else has a question right now, has anything in your work stuck out? Have there been any red flags that have emerged that you're looking further into?
Nothing that we have to report out yet at this point. I know there's a lot of document transfer, so there's things that we're asking management to provide. There are 39 different state compliance areas that the state has asked us to look at. That's excluding your federal funding and the testing over that. So there's a lot to go through. At this point, we don't have any reportable findings that we need to elevate to the committee.
Any other members of the committee? Superintendent?
Thank you, Chair Emerald. That question actually prompted a thought in my mind, and quite frankly, I don't think there's any information, but I will ask it just in case. Have you heard of any guidance regarding the FPM process? By FPM, I'm referring to the Federal Program Monitoring. simply because of the fact that the federal government and the state government seem to be going in dialectically opposing directions.
The FPM audit is sort of separate in scope from the external financial audit, so we don't sort of cross paths directly. The only thing I would say is that if there are other reports that come out of FPM that have an impact on the work that we do, we take that into consideration in our risk assessment. But I don't have any specific information as far as what impacts that those changes may have. Yeah. Sorry, that's a no answer. I recognize that. Full acknowledge.
That's safely put. Any other questions here? Welcome, Mr. Gutowski. Do you have any questions or comments? Okay, very good. Mr. Solis, no? Are you close to bringing a report back on any of the issues that you're looking at?
I guess the short answer is no, because there is still a lot that we need to get through. The audit report for Sweetwater is in excess of 100 pages long, including all the reporting that we have to do. And so a lot of that 100-some pages incorporates the year-end final numbers, which the district management team is currently working to close the books on. So, it would be too early for us to give a comment on any final document delivery timeline.
I got you on that. And in all your auditing, pretty much every program that we have, sources of expenditures, money coming in.
So, from the financial statement perspective, everything is subject to sampling, as you probably already are aware. Because it's an audit, we don't look at every transaction, we look at a sample of transactions, and that includes different sources of revenues or expenditures that are, reported by the districts. And so in this case, we won't look at every transaction, we're gonna look at a sample of it, and we use auditing standards to follow and determine what our sample guidance would be, or sample sizing. So yes, I guess is the answer.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Not at this time. I just really appreciate management. I know they're doing a lot of work to get everything for us. We have a lot of the things that we ask for, so appreciate everyone and their efforts to get things for us and on a timely basis. So thank you.
We appreciate your guidance, too, and all your hard work on this. We know how important it is to make sure that our money's going where it needs to go and that we have records that indicate that we're spending it the way we've presented it to the public. And so thank you so very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
We'll go next then to Dr. Salkeld and Fiscal Services Division and other ongoing and completed external audits and reviews. And you've got several here.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon to the committee. And so we have listed here, aside from, as noted on the bottom, we do have the external audit, which Mr. Rively just provided an update on. But the first two, these are new that have just come up. The first one is the School Food Authority, and it's the local procurement review. So we're actually working very closely with Mr. Eric Spann in Nutrition Services. He's taking the lead with this particular CDE review. They look a lot at regulations and some of their procurement practices. So we received the notice just recently, so the scope has not started yet. It'll be probably around the September timeframe. So we'll be working very closely with him and also with Don Prince, our purchasing manager, as it relates to anything that they need to look at with bids or contracts. So we'll get a little bit more of that information in the upcoming months. And then once they review it and the CDE has any other follow-up, we will certainly bring it here to the committee, and then Mr. Spann will be available once the report is complete.
Is this the first time that you've done an in-depth audit of our food services?
So there's various different ones. We actually met with him not too long ago. This particular review was done many, many years ago. I want to say it was 2017 or 18 timeframe. But we do hold an administrative review meeting with the CDE, and that's done every 5 years. So it just depends on the scope. This one's just very much narrow in scope related to procurement practices.
Okay, so you didn't have a regular schedule per se leading up to this particular audit. Was there anything that prompted this audit this
I think
year?
it's just the normal course of their review. Yeah.
Okay,
It's the
any
cycle
other
that they go
questions?
through.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the panel here?
Okay. And then the second item is the CalPERS, and this is a census audit. They go through they have an external audit at the state level, kind of testing some of the data. And so we work closely with the County Office of Education because they look at the payroll records. So between the payroll department and the human resources department, we've provided the first phase of items that they needed or they requested. So we will await, similar to what Mr. Rively mentioned on their end, we're waiting for the sample. And so we'll pull those records once we get that sample. But it is initiated through CalPERS specifically and their auditor.
Yeah, are there certain criteria for deciding what those samples will be? And could you give us some examples of the samples that you're taking a look
It's all
at?
dependent on their audit. They tell us, give us a data set similar to, it's the same scope, like just with our auditor, Crow, that they mentioned. They will take a data set and say, give us all the employees that were paid during a certain time frame, and then they develop their own criteria. They don't necessarily tell us what the materiality thresholds are, those different criteria. So they pick based on what they're looking for.
Is that part of a process of making sure that your requests aren't things that they're studying up on beforehand, that you want to pick issues at random, or where you've seen some changes?
That's completely up to the auditor. We just comply by providing the information. We don't have much of a say in terms of those criteria, but that's what they look, it's dependent on their criteria.
I think Dr. Sokol's being really diplomatic. We are totally at their mercy.
Yes. We comply. It's the data set, and then we comply.
Okay, well, we want to stay friends with the auditors, too, I think. Okay, next then, do we have any public comments on any of the issues so far that have been discussed? I want to make sure that this is open to folks who might have questions of their own that we're not thinking of, or might have some concerns. Okay. Then with the external audits, correct? District financial audit for the year ending June 30th of this year. Is that you as well, Ms. Salkeld?
So that's just a recap of
Or
what was
Dr.
previous.
Salkeld, excuse me.
Okay, no worries.
Okay.
That was just a recap, just so that we have it memorialized here, what was just previously presented. So we will continue with that work, as was mentioned, through December when we bring that to the committee as well as to the board.
Terrific. Any questions or comments here? Okay. I don't want to leave anybody out here.
Yeah, one, I know we talked years ago about the Gaylord Resort and that parcel potentially benefiting the district. I'm wondering if there's any foreseeable financial or enrollment benefits for the district, and if you could comment on that.
Yes, as you may be aware, there are the property uses that do come into play. So Dr. Sokol has been in communication with them. In terms of enrollment, we don't anticipate much, since it really is more of a convention and hotel space. But Dr. Sokol, can you speak to developer fees?
Yes, so we worked very closely, thank you, Dr. Aguirre, with the city and with the Gaylord developer firm. And it was approximately, I want to say, over $600,000 that the district received in developer fees. And those funds go into a specific fund. It doesn't go into general fund. It's specifically into the developer fees.
And you say nothing going forward, this was just in
It's
the
the
process?
one,
of
based on their
development.
permit, with the square footage, all the different criteria, that's in alignment with the developer fees. They paid based on those criteria, on that criteria.
Okay, great. Next up, Prop O financial performance audits, as well as measures DD and RR. Is that you as well, Dr. Sokol?
Yes, again, that's just echoing what was presented with the district financials in those areas with the bonds. What is new this year is the RR, because we did have that issuance in March, which is our first inaugural issuance. So their scope from the audit standpoint now covers 3 bond programs, Prop O, Measure DD, and Measure RR. So they'll provide, there's going to be 2 separate financials, performance and financial audit for each one of those measures. So it'll be 6 plus the district's financial, so 7 complete audit reports.
And those, I keep messing with this button. Those would be coming up in the future down the road as we
Correct.
start seeing the performance and where money is invested and so forth.
We will present to the CBOC in November, just let them know kind of where that draft is, and we will bring it to the committee to the it'll be early December, with your review and recommendation to then take to the audit committee before the 15th of December.
And for those who may be watching and don't understand our alphabet soup, what does CBOC stand for?
Citizens Business Bond Over, I keep saying business, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee.
Okay, very good.
And Chair Emerald, just real clear, for those who may be wondering about timelines, these timelines are actually specified in Education Code. So that's why the December 15th, no later than December 15th.
I noticed that in this folder today on all of our items, there are a lot of specific dates. And maybe you could explain in layman's terms the purpose of having these specific dates laid out.
Do we want to address it when we get to that? Because we do have a calendar. We
Yeah.
address it at that one.
But it's about keeping things on schedule.
Yes, because
and-
it's all statutory, as Dr. Geary mentioned. All of these in the world that we're at with audit and financials, all statutorily driven. And there's a lot of agencies that we have to provide this information to, mostly the County Office of Ed and the California Department of Education. So, and then from the audit, there's various covenants that we have also because of our bonds. We have to share it with the rating agencies, we have to share it with different investors. So there's different audiences that rely on this information.
About being open and the whole process here, so people understand what each line means, what each issue means. Anything else you would like to add with regard to C1?
That's it.
So we'll now go to you in the big budget presentation, right?
So
Our
in
budget
regards
development program.
to the budget presentation, I just wanted to highlight it, probably going to slide specifically with the multi-year projection, because as you heard me mention, this is a point in time. So the work that we brought forward to the board in June was based on the negotiations that were still happening at the state level with the governor and then the state legislature, assembly, and senate. And so these are the numbers that we have in building our 25-26 budget and the out-year assumptions. Since then, the budget has been signed by the governor. A lot of it is more around the restricted resources. The cost of living adjustment percentage still stayed the same, what we already had factored in. There's just been update regarding the Learning Recovery Block Grant that was extended an additional year, plus some additional funding, a little over $300 million. But again, we're waiting to see what that will translate to the district. And a few other considerations. So that's what we're working on now, which is part of what we consider the 45-day budget, which we'll bring forward to the board. And we're having conversations with the county as to what details to include or not include. But at that point in time, it's just pointing out that the district does have a structural deficit, but we do have reserves to offset those out years. It's just a lot of new developments recently with school starting last week, us looking at enrollment numbers and things like that, how this might change as we get to first interim and the next reporting cycle. But what we presented to the board, the intent is to present a balanced budget for the 25-26 year. Even though we provide an out year projections, it's not a certification at that point until first interim, where the board certifies that they can meet the obligations for the 3-year period. So that's what we'll look forward to in the upcoming months, but certainly we have a lot of moving pieces right now with enrollment and other things.
Dr. Aguirre.
Thank you, Chair Emerald. So our budget is built upon what in California is called average daily attendance, which is a factor of our overall enrollment. So for example, if you have 10 students, any given day, you're gonna have 2 that are out sick. That's an analogy, but in essence, we try to get our attendance as high as possible, knowing that that happens. If our enrollment drops, then since we're talking about budget, then our funding is going to drop. We had built this year's budget with an assumption of a decrease of 700 students. What I can say is we are experiencing a much higher level of decline with our enrollment. There are multiple hypotheses. There are multiple theories that are out there. I think some probably having more credence than others. But at the end of the day, we're going to have to make do with the budget and the funding that we do have, and that's going to get smaller. Quite frankly, the rhetoric, and not only the rhetoric, but the images that our community is seeing around immigration enforcement are very likely to have had a very strong impact on what we're seeing. Again, at this point, it's a theory. We don't have empirical data to support that, but I think we can all see what's happening, and being that we are a border community. So I think we're also one of the first, if not the first districts down in South Bay that come back to school for the 25-26 school year. So in some ways, we're also the canary in the coal mine. We're first out of the gate. So I think what we're seeing is a very significant decrease in enrollment for us anyways. And what we do every beginning of the year, we convene our executive team for a number of hours per day to review our enrollment data and do deeper level analysis. And so we're in that process as we speak. We do that for the first 10 days. So as we're going in, today was day 4. we're starting to narrow down and get better numbers, and those numbers still look somewhat negative, not as negative as they look the day 2 or day 3. They're getting a little bit better, and we do anticipate that. That tends to be the pattern from July through September. There's a recovery that happens. But then from September through P2, which is the period 2 reporting that happens, those numbers tend to also regress. So there's a lot of things that are happening with our enrollment and our attendance. But at the end of the day, we do anticipate our budget's going to continue to be challenged and tested based on the fact that we now see less students in our schools. That's the bottom line. How they can look, how we can break funding, how we can put strategies and tactics together to support our community, to support our students, our staff, and our broader community is something that we're taking very seriously, and we work very closely with the board and with the stakeholders. But I also wanted to kind of preview what we're starting to observe as an emerging trend, which is an acceleration of the declining enrollment.
And we do have a docket item with regard to this and that we'll get to, but first, Mr. Solis.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question, do we communicate with our feeder districts to see if they're seeing the same decline?
I've had preliminary conversations, and I can share with a number of them, not with everyone. San Ysidro School District just returned today, so I think they're going to take a couple of days to get a better sense of their numbers. But Chula Vista Elementary School District is observing a decline in enrollment, not as strong as ours. And South Bay Union School District is experiencing a strong decline in enrollment, not as strong as ours in absolute numbers, but proportionally, I think, closer to where we are. I think that's the difference. They may be at a certain number, but given that they're a smaller district, proportionally, I think, as a percentage, I think we're pretty close. But the absolute number, ours is bigger just as a factor of the fact that we're a bigger district.
Thank you.
Ms. Schmidt?
I'm not sure if this is the appropriate time to have the conversation about the trends and what's to come, but seeing as there's other variables, declining births, and, you know, working for a legislator and knowing that there was a lot of kick the can in terms of the budget and less budget and uncertainty at the federal government. Are those conversations that you're referring to happening about the future and some ideas like reducing class sizes or just kind of a holistic conversation about the future? And the reserves are healthy, but it is pretty alarming to know that the future uncertainty of enrollment in general.
Yeah. So I think to the broader phenomenon of declining enrollment, we have definitely had those conversations for years now. We've been putting some planning in place. Whether we actually, kind of how do we address it, I think that's a broader conversation that, again, what we have observed is an acceleration of that trend, a marked acceleration of that trend. So we do have some strategies in place and things to look at. But at the end of the day, I think there's no two ways around it. We're going to be a smaller district moving forward. And I also want to be clear, it's not because of any program issue. You could have the best program available. I believe there was just a recent article in the Voice of San Diego that just pointed out that across the county, there's simply just less children. I think they mentioned a number of 27,000 across the county. So there's less, when you have less kids, schools are going to be smaller. Now, how you do that, I think that's where we're doing some brainstorming. Those conversations need a lot of front-loading, where you have to have conversations with community, with parents, with staff. A number of associations would be impacted. So that's something that would happen. And we're trying to be as methodical as possible to reduce surprises to anybody. But when you see the numbers that we're seeing right now, that's starting to be a little, it just catches our attention, because it's the numbers that we are seeing and the declines that we're seeing this year are unprecedented. Even during the pandemic, we didn't see the numbers that we're starting to get a sense. Now, again, there's still a good movement in flex because we're only day 4. But the numbers we're seeing are pretty unprecedented. Having said that, we're hopeful that those recover over the next, between now and October, because that's our P2 official enrollment date. But perhaps we're seeing something broader that's going on in perhaps the state of California or along the border regions. Yeah. But we had, I think, a pretty sound basis for the projection in enrollment that we had developed, but this has exceeded and accelerated where we anticipated being. So it's, and again, staff, I think, is, to your question, we're being very diligent about how we can do this in a way that's very thoughtful, humane, and minimizing the impact to students and staff. But just given what we're seeing right now, that's going to be a challenge, but we're going to continue to do that.
ADA is a challenge in itself, but on top of that, we have a federal education budget, and our district is going to be impacted by that, as are districts throughout California and the nation. And who would like to comment on that issue?
I can make a broad comment. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty coming from the federal administration. Just on Friday, we did hear that the administration was going to be releasing the funds that they had been frozen, or they were in a freeze. For our district, it's the equivalent of approximately $5.5 million. Granted, this $5.5 million that we had already expended, because that was for the budget year 24-25, which the federal government is still in the process of. Their budget year begins October 1 and ends in September. But those funds had been previously frozen. They became thawed, if you will, or we got note that they will be released. So that definitely, every little bit helps. But again, this is money that was expended for us last school year. So, and they had to do with some of the particular title funding. It was not Title I, it was Title II, Title III. Title II is a lot of professional development. Some Title II, Title III funds. So an example of what those could support are English language learners, migrant education programs. So those are examples of monies that had been frozen, but thankfully we got word on Friday that they had been released. Now what is the uncertainty that continues is what happens with the federal government's budget for fiscal year 25-26. And they're gonna obviously adopt a different budget. And at that point, we're gonna be looking at that. Dr. Saka, would you mind sharing approximately, what is the approximate level of the share of our budget that comes from the federal government?
That's about, I think we've got it on here, it's about probably more closer to 7%. It's a very small number, but still, again, very targeted supports, and like you mentioned, with Title II, 3, and 4, and even also with our adult school as well. It's very minimal, but it does have an impact when you're relying on those. And when the dollars are spent, as Dr. Geary mentioned, 24-25, those dollars are already expended.
And again, the confluence of factors that we're facing, we see some storm clouds over the horizon. The confluence of factor being uncertainty with the federal government. In addition, this decline of enrollment that's pretty significant. In addition, some of the other things that we're looking at, either from a grants perspective, that we currently receive that have a sunset. So it's a confluence a factor, and it's a pretty layered analysis. And those are all the things that we are doing internally to make sure we can try to stay ahead of that curve to the degree possible. That when some of these trends accelerate, it's just makes it challenging to kind of keep up with those trends.
Anything else anybody would like to add? No? Okay. We'll go then to budget revenue and expense assumptions, correct?
Well, this was just, the agenda
Or
item was the
financial
adopted
report?
budget, so we just did a high level. I mean,
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
we're gonna go through each one, unless
okay, well,
there's a
the-
request to go through
I
each
guess
one.
it's the financial reports at this point, yes? And is that you?
And that's the adopted budget.
That's it, okay.
Uh-huh.
So you want to talk a little bit about highlights in this adopted budget going forward?
And that's, like I mentioned earlier, with this particular page with the multi-year assumptions, again, it's going to be subject to change based on the enrollment numbers and so forth, and what we received with the final budget more on the restricted resources. So we'll take a look at what that'll impact.
Okay. There was a page on COLAs, and I was wondering if you you could explain what's going on with the statutory COLAs.
So that is about 2.3%. So it may revise when the governor released the budget. That was at that number, and it stayed static. The state funded it when the budget was adopted in June, so we don't see any change with that. Now, always the out years, those are the assumptions we're going to use of what's shared with the Department of Finance or the State or School Services of California. We'll revisit that when the governor releases the January budget, where some of those numbers change.
So again, this button. So again, this is all a moving target still.
Yeah, these are, at least for the current year, the 2.3 that is in the adopted budget, but it's the out years that will be subject to change.
Okay. Moving on, since we had spoken about the enrollment trends going, do you have some thoughts about how that could impact us going forward in the next several years?
As Dr. Geary mentioned, again, when that stabilizes and we have those numbers, I mean, it could be, on average, for like the high school student, it could be about $15,000 per the grant. So again, depending on the magnitude of what that number is, could be pretty significant. And so it would not impact us this year in terms of the overall revenues. The only thing for this year that it could impact us is with the local control accountability plan, because we rely on the unduplicated percentage. So that's where it could be a little bit of a variable in terms of an impact, but it would be more so in the 26, 27 year, because the funding for LCFF is always 1 year in arrears, kind of the funded aspect, because we are in a declining status. And so that impact of where the final enrollment numbers end would impact us next year. So that could change that 26, 27 enrollment or financial numbers, which could have a compounding effect, because with the loss, then will impact the following year as well, because the revenue's not there.
I know that we've got, it's quite a book that we've got here this month, but on page 26, we look at, we break it down in numbers, the kinds of losses we could very well sustain with reduced students here, reduced number of students. And it's basically in the hundreds going forward, perhaps except for 26, 27, we're projected to lose 40 students. How do you balance that out?
Is that on the slide? I was gonna say, there's an enrollment slide in the beginning. I just want to make sure we're referring to this, right?
It's page 26 in the packet.
Is it the one that has a table?
Yeah.
I think, Tessie, if you go a little bit to the front of the presentation.
Page 26 in it.
So
Yeah,
if I can
yeah.
just provide some context to the question about enrollment projections. I think what was developed during the December to winter timeline. I think based on what we're seeing right now, we can pretty confidently say that those trends have been accelerated. Because back then, our community wasn't seeing some of the visual images coming out of, a lot of it coming out of Los Angeles and kind of what's happening with enforcement. So even if it does say 40, I think these trends have all been accelerated.
Okay. So these are obsolete numbers that were posted in
Based
there.
on what we're observing, I would say that they are in need of being updated. I don't know if obsolete, it was our best projection at the time, given what was known, and obviously the environment and the atmosphere has changed.
Right. And it'll be updated, right? It's always that that review that happens. So we have what's known as the seabeds, which is the first Wednesday in October. So we'll be evaluating that number. That number is what's going to help us build the first interim projections and that impact. We'll again look at the numbers, which is CalPADS, which comes into January. So we'll continue to monitor this all the way through March timeframes, or they call the P2, where we look at that final number as well. So the enrollment will continue to be monitored, because that will impact funding for next year.
Okay.
But-
I
But
know
these were at that point in time, given what Dr. Geary, the
Okay.
context he provided.
So we have some general fund revenue assumptions in your report too. And do you want to speak to any of that going forward through the 27, 28
I think
time?
those are the subsequent slides. Again, it's what we have through the May revise, the information we had at that point. We will continue to monitor these also once we started the new year. We'll start to look at trends and actuals, and we'll be reviewing each one of those assumptions as we get to first interim in December, and then again as we get into second interim in March, and then also when we bring the estimated actual. So it's always a process and review of where those things, what we originally assumed, and how actuals are trending.
A question, and I know it's not specifically here, but I'm curious. How much is the ADA per student?
So again,
Yeah.
yes, average daily attendance.
Average daily attendance for students, yeah.
Yeah.
How much money does that represent?
So and I'll ask Dr. Sokol to share an average number, because the way they were funded, there's different bands of
Yes.
funding. So elementary levels pay one amount, middle schools pay another amount, and then the high school levels pay a different amount. And then, well, I think they're already up there. So, Dr. Sokol, if you want to walk us through these,
Yes.
and then some of the other kind of when you're unduplicated students and some of that.
That's so you have what they know as the base grant, and then so let's start with like high school. So you have base grant, you have the grade span adjustment, and then the supplemental and concentration. That's where the LCAP funding comes into play. So like at the high school level, it's a little bit around 15,000 when you aggregate that together. Middle school is a little bit less than that. It's about $12,000-$13,000. So there are all these calculations going based on that foundation of those base grants. But then it does look at, like we have here, our estimate of an average daily attendance, which our assumption is around 92%. Historically, prior to the pandemic, the district was at 94%. But these numbers have been holding. I mean, we went down at one point in time as a district around 87, 88% during the pandemic. So those have rebounded somewhat, but not back to where the district was before. So this becomes a calculation as well into that overall funding in terms of the aggregate. And I think if you go to the next slide? It shows it's the 400 and some million dollars. Maybe it's the LCFF. District gets around 460 million. When you aggregate all of this together, based on those assumptions, into the $400 million range from the state, just with local control funding formula.
What is the lag time? So we've got our ADA, say, for this month or for a certain term, school term. When do we receive ADA money?
So from a cash standpoint, there's an appropriation schedule, so they will distribute that based on that. So usually the July and August are lower amounts, and then they increase that in September all the way through. That basis is usually from July through February, based on the prior year's P2. So there's a schedule. The state controller, working with the CDE, allocates those monthly. We do get an amount apportionment every month. That is also tied in with property taxes when they come in. It's also tied in with the education protection account. So there's just different tranches of money that get distributed throughout the year.
Anything
Again,
you
if I
wanna-
may, so we basically receive a monthly allocation from the state. I think what we're trying to convey is that it's not always a set amount. Based on that schedule, generally speaking, the month of April and May tend to be a little bit higher than other months. If you want to think about it, it usually tracks when the state deadline for tax collection happens, April 15th. But it's not a kind of a stable number. It fluctuates based on the schedule we receive from the state.
So is this what you, does this cover your revenue assumptions page here?
It's a little bit with the revenue assumptions going into that LCFF calculation and how the cash is paid.
Gotcha. Going to our next page on this report, expense assumptions. Will there be much of a difference in the money we have to lay out for the services that we provide?
So again, these are more, if you go back, sorry, Ceci, go back. These, again, are underlying assumptions, especially one on the staffing costs, how we look at step and column based on their salary schedule, but also the pension contributions. Those are set either by statute, such as with STRS, or with PERS, which is by their board. So those numbers are set, and that's what we budget according to those percentages.
So the numbers that we're seeing are pretty set.
As it relates to the pensions, for health and welfare premiums, we do work with our benefits team during each of our reporting cycles, so we'll evaluate that with first interim and the second interim if those assumptions of those amounts remain the same. So those are the opportunities where we can make those adjustments.
Okay. And we'll be going into multi-year projections coming up on our docket, but are there any questions or comments with regard to the subjects we've covered so far?
I just wanted to talk about the reserves. One, grateful to the board for having the contingency reserve at 3%, but given the scenario and grim forecast, is there any discussion on potentially asking to lower that reserve to maybe 2%? Just throwing it out there.
And so that's a really good question because it's actually at a statutory threshold. Dr. Sokol, can you talk about kind of where the different thresholds kick in statute?
Yes, so based on the district's, it's not enrollment, it's also AD, it's average daily attendance threshold. So where the district is at now, the district's at the 2% qualifying factor. So that's the economic uncertainties percentage is 2%. Once the district falls below the 30,000, almost 29,000 ADA, which from our projections, we've gone in and out, but now based on where enrollment, we may come back into that threshold or below that threshold. Current statute now will require from the 2% to actually increase it to 3%. So it's actually going in a different direction.
Yeah, so just as we need some flexibility, what it actually is gonna do is we're losing students, but it's gonna make us earmark
More money.
more money for reserves, which is almost counterintuitive because of the situation that's happening. It is because I think of the unprecedented nature. I also think there's going to be a lot of districts within the state. We're not going to be the only ones. So whenever you fall under 30,000 students ADA, that's when you have to kind of kick up that reserve, which is almost kind of I'm sure there was an incident that happened that triggered that thought. I don't think it makes sense for what we're currently facing. It works against districts that are declining enrollment, so I think we're one of the early districts that are going to be in that. And there may be other thresholds that kick in as well that then require you to have other higher reserves as you get smaller, which again, it's kind of having an inverse relationship, which makes it kind of harder. So at some point, I think it would be judicious of us to approach the state legislature to see if we can re-examine and either establish one baseline for all districts or adjust this so that it doesn't inadvertently kind of become punitive for schools that are in declining enrollment through no force of their own.
And me again, when that number is set, the attendance number, is it at a certain reporting period? Or
Yeah, so the reporting period CBEDS, so that would be in October.
That's the first measurement through the first Wednesday of October. And then we reevaluate it in January with the CalPads. So we kind of look at those dates throughout the year.
Is it just the 1 month of October, or do you were saying later on you revisit, or?
So again, from a reporting standpoint, first Wednesday of October is known as CBEDS. That's one measurement period that gets submitted to the state. We evaluate these numbers as they're moving when we do our reporting, like first interim, which would be December. There's another state reporting, which is CalPads, which is done in January, that looks at that CBEDS data and all of it, making sure that that's all in alignment. That gets another submittal. We look at those numbers, the percentages, the unduplicated, because that's where the unduplicated ties to the LCAP. And then we also evaluate it again as it's moving, if there's any other changes, so when we come back to the board for second interim. And then again, too, if there's any change for the end of the year.
So we've got to watch this continually. It's a moving target, and we can't make any assumptions, but perhaps there are strategies that we can use to hold on to the kids we've got or to recruit more students to the district. That's really interesting. So first Wednesday in October, and then you were saying looking at reviewing in December?
We bring the first interim.
Okay, terrific. Any other questions or comments on this issue before we move on? It's kind of quiet around here. District 25-26 budget. Not an easy one. Talk about moving targets, right? Dr. Sockel, do you want to give us the good news and the not so good news here?
I think what we just reviewed was tying into the budget piece of it. I think it's just something for us to continue to monitor as we move forward to first interim.
Expense assumptions, right?
And if I may, I think that if there's a good news, if there is any, is that this is not a phenomena that's solely something that's happening at Sweetwater. This is
Right.
happening across the entire county. It's happening across the entire state. Based on what the the CDC was reporting last week, I think this is truly a national, if not global, phenomenon. So the good news is it's something that we're all in this together, trying to come up with steps and solutions, because ultimately it's going to affect all school districts. We're kind of first in line to feel these effects, but eventually it's probably going to be felt at higher education. So universities and colleges may feel this this trend, and eventually the economy is going to feel this trend, but for better or for worse, we are first in line to feel this effect, and so we're trying to put measures in place to address them as judiciously as possible.
Sure, anticipate so that we have a better chance of riding it out without too many bumps in the road. So here we go to our budget, multi-year projections.
I think that we went over that in the multi-year.
Good
like,
there?
Yeah.
I have a question
Yeah.
about the adult education fund.
Oh, yeah.
And seeing as the federal budget proposal might eliminate that funding, but I didn't see it in the projections, so is that just, we wait until that happens?
It's a good point. So we did share that with, and we presented that to the board in June, that it's WIOA and Perkins that are impacted. So it's about $1.2 million. So when we built this particular budget, it was that assumption that it would be there. So we did indicate with everyone that, that it was a risk. And then the funds were also frozen for 24, 25. So we were looking at almost a $2.4 million risk. And so now we're going to monitor the overall federal budget. So it is something for us to continue to monitor, particularly as we get close to December for first interim. And what that will mean, there is reserves here under adult school too. So in the event that WIO and Perkins is not funded in 25, 26, the reserves will absorb that.
And that's just under $4 million, this reserve?
Yes, at this point in time. We're closing the book, so that could change a little bit too.
Okay. And it's a 2% of the budget, of the overall budget, according to this document?
Yes, from what's on there at the bottom.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions, comments on adult education? I'm curious about how the budgets for our adult schools are fluctuating since we've actually started paying our instructors there a living wage, and are we bringing in more students to help cover expenses? Are we, what's happening with that?
I think there's a number of questions there. The bigger picture context is a couple of years ago, the federal government changed its funding formula, its funding mechanism. In the past, it was very much similar to an average daily attendance model. They changed it to completion of program model. So I think that really did have an impact where we saw a decrease. Then further after that, we also had the pandemic and different impacts. So at this point, I think we're somewhat, we've reached the point of stability, but we continue to do outreach and different programs. It's quite an innovative program. They have things like adults can obtain a certificate or credential to be able to fly drones from the FAA. Apparently you need a licensure to meet a licensure requirement for that. So they're pretty innovative, trying to offer programs like that. They also offer a lot of citizenship courses for members of our community who may be wanting to become citizens. So there's a lot of different types of programming that's offered. It's pretty innovative. In terms of the actual enrollment, we could probably come back to this body with updated kind of numbers to be able to observe a trend. I don't have those off mind, but I do know that they've been trying to bring in different types of programming to bring in that interest from our community, be it kind of the more practical pieces towards getting a job, or whether it's trying to be able to obtain citizenship, or whether it be to attain a skill like Excel, or to be able to support their students when they're doing homework. So there's a lot of different programming that's offered, and we can bring some more numbers to be able to see some trends.
So going forward, we may see this as a moving target for adding courses and adapting courses wherever we see students expressing interest, and what the market would suggest too.
Yeah, definitely, and they're pretty responsive to what our community's kind of needs are. The one unknown, just like we've been talking, is what happens at the federal government, because they do fund the adult education program at a very significant level with those two grants that Dr. Salkel mentioned. One is WIOA, and the other is Perkins. So there's a number of grants that we do receive that may be impacted depending on what happens with the federal budget.
So far, though, are we covering our expenses with our adult schools?
That is my understanding, Dr. Salkel.
Yes, they're pretty much breaking even
That's good.
as we were building this budget, because the budget doesn't reflect the changes that were negotiated for the salary schedules for the teachers and other staff.
Any questions or further comments about this particular issue before we move on? Okay. Cafeteria Fund, Fund 13.
So this one is working closely at the state level. There is a universal meal, so the funding there, and then also the claims that we remit. But significant portion is from the federal government claim. And so this program works in terms of the budget at an operating break-even type of, when we're doing the budget plan. They do have a surplus, but about 4 million of that surplus, we've been working with the CDE on a specific spend-down plan. Again, another area just to continue to monitor, because it has been high risk when the federal administration was also looking to make some changes with the funding here in this area too. So again, a little bit over $10 million could have been impacted.
Yeah, I see that 4.6 million is the approved for the spend-down plan.
Yes.
Yeah. And
And we
what
work-
areas have they come in with suggestions on where that spend-down may happen?
Yeah, so the Director of Nutrition Services has worked with the CDE, and they have areas such as equipment, ovens, different items that they need. I think a refrigeration truck, and then also some programs that they're putting in place. So it is reviewed with the CDE specifically and what the intent is, but it's a multi-year plan, so.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions or comments with regard to that? It always seems, I think they're really creative there in our food services, and Eric Span is finding all these various ways of expanding food production even on campuses, and then making deals out there. I'm surprised at the budget for Domino's Pizza, you know. That's
1.5
the
million,
number one
1.5 million?
choice. The kid's got to have the pizza, right? Fund 14, the Deferred Maintenance Fund.
Again, this is a small budget. We've got about $500,000 that's transferred from the general fund over to cover various deferred maintenance projects. So we work closely with Janaea and Ron on these specific items. Could be paint projects, things that are kind of applicable to the, again, from a deferred maintenance standpoint. That's outside of the routine restricted maintenance. So they look at very specific projects. And how
Ms.
they
Quirk,
spend
did
it.
you want to add anything about, you got to have more money, or gee, you got it sitting around, or where are some of the greatest needs, and what should we be thinking of when we talk budgets and where dollars are needed?
Thanks. Ms. Emerald, I always need and want more money. What I would say, from deferred maintenance and even routine, is the approach that we're having with that is how we're also integrating that in with our capital program that sits over here with the bonds. And so we're looking at this from a full-scale approach, from day-to-day routine maintenance, from down to the basics of like your roof and HVAC replacements to painting projects, to how do those integrate to our bigger capital projects. And so we're multi-layering things. You'll see some of that in some of the capital projects we just brought forward to you. Some of them were really exciting, roof and HVAC replacements. And so we use some of this deferred maintenance monies to also offset. There's not a huge allocation for that. It also goes down to tree trimming and fence projects, other things that are out there, backflows, et cetera. So we take every dollar we can and we put it to good use.
Good.
Yep.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Anybody, any questions, comments? Winning lotto numbers? Okay. Building fund, the bonds, Fund 21. Which one is that?
So that's our bonds, that has the Prop O, Measure DD,
That's all
Measure
of
RR. So again, it's working with Janae and her team with the master plan, and the various projects that have already been approved by the board. And so we work through, so all the funds are incorporated in here of what we received as issuance, and then what we look at the budget and what gets carried forward into the next year.
Okay, and what's at the top of the list with regard to the projects that are have been budgeted?
In our second June board meeting, we brought forward and was approved for the design for about another $250 million worth of projects that range from building and site improvements, so modernization. There may be some new roof and HVAC projects, but we're getting queued up so that we are ready, project ready to go on the street as close as we can be for the issuance that we anticipate coming in late fall of 2026 and then again in 2027, so that we already have projects designed, DSA approved, ready to go.
Okay. Do you have any, for instances, tell us, this is mainly for the public wanting to know, gee, you got all this money coming in.
Sure.
What will we see from that?
So we're still locking down some of those details, but we're looking largely at kitchen renovations that are definitely needed on most of our campuses, locker room renovations and adaptive PE, gym improvements, quad improvements, some classrooms, a wide variety, similar to what we're doing right now with the projects that we have under construction at Bonita and Mar Vista and Castle Park.
Sure, it's a lot of construction going on in the district right now.
There is.
Dr. Aguirre, were you looking to jump in there?
Thank you. I was just saying how exciting it is whenever you're out and about in the community to see all the construction going on at our schools. I hope that's a testament to all those in our community of all the good work that's going on to ensure our students and our staff have those facilities that are, quite frankly, world-class and second to none. Our community deserves that, and there's no reason why they shouldn't have that. It's going to be methodical work, and there's always more need than funding available, but it is exciting to see the classroom that was just completed at Olympian is a 2-story classroom building. We're working on the stadium at Castle Park, at Chula Vista High School, at Mar Vista High School, which one? Southwest High School. So there's just and we're doing a pretty much a very deep modernization in Mar Vista Academy, or new construction at Mar Vista Academy. We're going to be working at Granger Junior High School. So there's a lot of work that's going on. For a long time, we didn't have the ability to work on our facilities, and now that we can, we want to make sure we're truly offering our students and our staff those best-in-class facilities, because that's what they deserve.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. A lot of sticks in the air right now. Okay, great. Anything else you want to add on the bonds and being spent and all these projects? Are you keeping track of numbers? And
We work closely with Janae, and we have the SIP report, and we track all that in the budget.
Yeah, right. Fund 25 is the Capital Facilities Fund. Anything else you want to add on our capital facilities?
Again, this is usually initiated when there's a state match, and when Janae and her team submit an application, but we haven't received some funds in quite some time. So again, very minimal in terms of some of the scope. We've got 1 or 2 projects assigned to this.
Well, okay. And what's happening on the broader scale with these matching funds? Is this a state competition, regional, national? How does it work?
It's all of those things that you just said. So the last influx of state funds that we received was back after we did the 2018 district-wide HVAC project. It was a $35 million project, and we received $17.5 million back from the state. We have expended a portion of that on a few various projects, like right now, Montgomery Stadium rehabilitation is being funded by Fund 25. And we are sitting on about $10 million right now that I'm looking at where we're going to drop that and put that into play. In terms of the second phase of projects that went through, like the Mar Vista Pool, Bonita Stadium, East Lakes Library and Stadium modernization, and I think Olympian, we have about another $20 million worth of funding applications that are in process. If and when and where we will ever see reimbursements from that is the question. That reimbursement is attached to the state bond that was passed, but typically there's so many applications in the queue from school districts across the state. You generally will only get a small allocation, or you may be waiting for quite some time. Honestly, our 2018 allocation from HVAC, we kind of hit this nice little sweet spot. And my understanding is that the modernization money, I might have this backward, I think it's the modernization money is already depleted, because even the state looks at those reimbursements differently. They have a modernization fund and they have a new construction fund. I believe there's still money sitting in new construction. So we submit on all applications, on all projects, regardless of if they tell us we'll get money or not, because you never know.
Is this first come, first serve, or is this based on the importance, the of the project?
I
the
would
value of
say
the project?
it's, if you're doing your diligence and you're putting yourself in line, then you're putting yourself in the position to get some funds released to you. The problem is that, like, similar to we all have a greater need than we have funds, it's the same situation for the state in terms of what they have to distribute for match. So being aggressive, staying on top of it, doing your work, it pays off in the end. We may see some of these applicants, these funds that might come in 5 years from now. We'll track it. It could be in 18 months. We keep you informed as we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments to Ms. Quirk? Nope. Okay. County School Facilities Fund, Fund 35, excuse me.
Again, this one's very minimal in terms of what we have. Oh, sorry, I had it backwards with 25 and 45. Sorry, yes, the 2 5s, yes. Sorry, yeah, we were going over the projects was this one. The other one was the developer fees. So, again, this one's the very minimal in terms of the funding.
Oh, $29, $30 million, if that's, I mean, it's minimal, but it's a lot.
Right, minimal in terms of new monies, but it's money sitting there available, as Janaea
Okay.
said, she has a plan for
How
those.
about the Special Reserve Fund for Capital Outlay Projects? That's Fund 40.
Fund 40, so that one is some leases, but a lot of those leases we've been phasing out. They're at L Street. The source of most of those revenues are through the county, through the redevelopment agency, that we still have some contracts in place that those monies come in. And so that's what those sources of revenues are. And also sale of proceeds of property from a while back.
Yeah, I think Dr. Sacco's talking about the revenue sources. The other thing to keep in mind with Fund 40 is there's some real limitations on what it can be expended on. It has to be on capital outlays. so.
And Fund 40 is it for construction in a specific place, a specific project, or is it a fund sitting there waiting for a project?
Typically for infrastructure, some projects, what we end up may use it for.
Okay, so, good.
Again, we work with Janaea and Dr. Gary where needed, kind of based
I
on
know
need.
there are lots of pages here about various funds, and I hope you don't mind my breaking them out individually, but you know, it's interesting, you know, and I think that the public probably has got some interest in how we're spending all of this money and what fund does what. It's part of the educational process for all of us.
And I think that's really important because sometimes the broader public may not understand that, well, they see we're spending resources on something, not understanding that there's really there's some rules and limitations around what that money can be spent for. So it's really helpful to get that understanding in the broader public so that there can be an understanding of the fact that some monies can be used for this, for example. For example, bond monies cannot be spent on administrator salaries or teacher salaries. The fact that this special reserve for fund can't be used for other things other than like infrastructure projects. So it's very limited, but it's helpful to be able to get some of that in the public domain.
Exactly. Okay. Well, the next one is Capital Projects Fund for Blended Component Units, Fund 49. What are blended component units? And
That's the standardized account code structure naming, but in other words, it's for our community or our facilities districts, our CFDs,
okay,
our Mello-Roos.
Mello-Roos.
And different AKA for Mello-Roos. Again, this is reflective of the special taxes that come in, about 30 million or so. Also, there is some debt service. There are some certificate of participation obligations that we still have for about $11 million. But in this area too, we work closely with Janaea and the reports that she has and the items and the projects she's got listed on the SIP report that highlights some of the areas that we've been supporting and renovating or updating some of our schools.
And this is a big fund. There's a lot of money in this fund.
And what's unique with this fund, again, it can't be used for any salary, you knew where I was going. With salaries, this is specifically, it's a special tax through that Mello-Roos, and it's intended for, again, the provisions of each of those CFD agreements for facilities.
Facilities, streets, parkways, I mean, does it cover everything?
So for us, it's specific to schools, so no streets, no parkways unless like a parking lot on campus. And the one limitation on these, I do want to mention, is geographic limitation. So sometimes I think when we're working on projects in certain parts of the district, there's not an understanding that these funds can only go to certain schools, and it gets pretty technical after that, but there are geographical limitations generally. It's made up of, I want to say about 20 of these districts, 20 CFDs. So one or two of them do have some flexibility, but the rest are pretty locked in terms of the geographic location.
And paid for by property, people who buy property in the area, and they pay Mello-Roos fees that then go into a fund to keep those communities looking good, working well, that sort of thing.
Yeah, in this
Yeah.
case, again, it's specific to schools. Yeah, so we don't get into the kind of outside of a school campus
School
environment.
campus,
So
right.
this is for school buildings, school infrastructure, yeah.
Public infrastructure like that.
Public infrastructure and schools, correct.
Okay. Anything else anybody wants to add on this issue? You're making a little note there. Maybe you'll let me know. Foundation Private Purpose Trust. This is
That
Fund
is our Fund
73.
73. Very minimal. This has been, there were donations made many years ago. Again, stipulating certain interest earnings, but again, over the years, the interest has been, again, it hasn't met certain thresholds. So we just have, it's a fiduciary. We have to keep that aside and separate, tracked in this fund by itself.
Okay. So you just let that money grow or do whatever it's going to do, yeah?
I think historically, it hasn't hit, I think, the threshold for the earnings.
Righty. Thank you very much for letting us, filling us in on some of these so that maybe we understand, I understand it more, folks in the building understand it more, but the public has to know. Because they think, wow, there's all these hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and why don't they have a tree in back of the school or whatever? So that's good. All righty. Been through the audits, the calendar for internal audit items. Have we, the fraud hotline? Is there a report on our fraud hotline and an update?
So for that, I'll ask Mr. Bob Hughes, who's here today representing the compliance office. Is there any
Yes.
update from the fraud hotline?
Yes, we submitted our last quarterly for the last year. In that quarterly, as you know, we have a third-party provider, Integrity Counts, where the compliance office is charged with receiving those reports and then disseminating them to the appropriate office on whether or not they're true fraud. Honestly, we don't get a lot of true fraud complaints on the fraud hotline. Most of what we get are different concerns that are raised anonymously. But we address each of those issues. So for this period, we had 5 new complaints. Only one of them was fraud-related or could have been fraud-related. All of them have been closed with the exception of one at San Isidro High School. I'm just going to go down through them each. So on March 3rd, we had a concern raised at Sweetwater High School. It is a duplicate complaint that was filed earlier in the year related to case number 79480, which has been fully satisfied now through a personnel process. On May 5th, we had a strange reporting because we believe that it was a bot. It was a bunch of non-alpha numerical symbols with no discernible complaint. So you can put into Integrity Counts a typed in concern. So we believe that was a bot. There was no response to our requests for more information. We had one complaint about that could have been a true fraud. It was a complaint that was filed anonymously that the person thought another employee was not reporting their sick leave, but that was investigated and all the leave reports were in order. We have one that's still pending in terms of closure because quite honestly, it was a student discipline matter where the student was upset that they didn't get an item back that was confiscated by an assistant principal. So, but the school year had ended, so we're still waiting for that parent conference to take place so that student can get their item back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then last but not least, we had a non-fraud. There was a phishing email that was sent to all of our students regarding summer work opportunities. And some of our students actually did fall prey to this and put in some information. But the IT department was on it quickly. They sent out information to all families and students. They closed down that phishing campaign, and everything turned out okay.
Terrific.
Yeah.
That's great that you're able to jump on these things as quickly as you have. And back in my last career, you know, we would get 1,000 complaints about scams and spam and all kinds of things a week. And the fact that here's this big school district here in our community where you've only got a few and you actually investigate them all and are able to either resolve or at least reassure people that they're not being targeted for some kind of scam. So I think that's great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. But I do wonder if the numbers are small because maybe folks don't know about it. What are you doing to let students, staff, people in our community know?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do a lot of outreach to our various parent groups. We do an annual meeting with the ELAC and DLAC groups where our office gives them a just kind of a overview of the complaint systems. In specific, we talk about the UCP, the Uniform Complaint Procedure, which is really a discrimination complaint procedure. But also in that presentation, we've added the fraud hotline, and we advertise that to our parent groups as something that's available. And then it's also on our website, on the school district's website, that's available.
Okay, terrific. Sure. Thank you for what you do. That's
Absolutely,
great.
thank you.
And I think that we've come to the end of our docket for today. We've got some Audit Finance Subcommittee agenda schedules here that you might want to be aware of. October 6th will be our next meeting of this committee, then December 1st and March 2nd of 2026. Oh, here we go. Oops, sorry. My cane was so shocked it fell. It became faint. Please jot these dates down because, and invite people to come to this meeting. You know, that we have an opportunity to talk about a lot of important issues that maybe answer some questions that the public has and make sure that more people in our district are notified and educated about how things work in the district. And by doing that, they become more engaged in a positive way, I think. So with that, we'll see you back here on October 6th and... Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
we still have minutes to adopt
Oh, we do?
before adjourning.
Okay, well, adopting the minutes from next meeting, last meeting, okay. Those in favor of adopting these minutes from the last meeting, please let us know here, signify. Here we go,
Yes.
ding, ding. It's unanimous. And anything else that we need to cover before we adjourn for this afternoon?
The agenda does call for committee member comments, if there are any.
Okay, do you have a comment, Mr. Solis?
I do not.
Okay,
In reading through all the documents, I, normally get a pot of coffee, and it's normally like, 1,000 pages I have to read. I didn't even get through my first cup, so thank you for the concise reporting from staff. Thank you.
yeah, and thank you, staff. You lay this out in such a way that even relative novices at all of this can understand it and apply it. And understand the significance. So thank you so very much for all your hard work, and I look forward to seeing you back here. We'll have more meetings, but our next meeting will be in December for this committee. Thank you. With that, we're adjourned. Link.